The biggest person you'll need to influence in your life is yourself. Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. Your ability to influence yourself into action is critical to creating the outcomes that you desire. Many of my clients talk about their job as this external force that controls their every movement and that they're really dependent on that position to get the outcomes they desire. They come to me and ask about influence strategies they can use at the job to increase their income or their wages and their career opportunities, like who do they need to meet, what do they need to do, and they miss out on the biggest factor of influence, which is their ability to control their own activities. One example is that a study of executives shows that the average executive or the typical executive gets 1.5 hours of productive time each day. Now, this is a self-survey, and the executive feels that's all they got done in the day. And imagine going on year after year, getting 1.5 hours of work done each day. You're there for a full 10 hours, but you're in meetings and you're talking to people and trying to figure out what's going on. You're following up. You're getting status reports, but the real productive work you get done just feels like it's few and far between. And this happens not because of your environment. And this is often where we get stuck. We feel like the environment around us controls our ability to succeed or our ability to level up, when in fact it's our own behavior. You can modify your environment, modify your schedule, modify the people you interact with, make decisions about what you're going to do each day so that you're focused on the most productive items each day. And now that 1.5 hours of productive time is in the trenches, solid, productive work, and then you can add another 90 minutes. You can add another 90 minutes. You can also syndicate, which is you decide what's important and you assign people to those important activities so that they get completed. For example, I don't clean my house. It's important that my house is clean, but it takes me forever to clean the house. And I do clean up after myself, but ultimately every other week, housekeepers come in and they clean the whole house. And those housekeepers, 2 of them take about 2.5 hours to clean the entire house, top to bottom. But my responsibility has become the big objects. You know, when I'm working out in the yard and I come into my boots, I got boots, I swap out of my boots into some little slipper shoes, I guess, outside, and then I don't track in any dirt, so I don't make it any messier. But ultimately, I'm responsible for keeping the spaces clean. If I have a party and have some friends over for a potluck or a dinner party, I make sure that the dinner party's cleaned up. And then when the cleaning folks come, it is a routine activity of those tasks that are labor intensive and take me a bunch of time. As I tell the kid, I spent 18 years cleaning the bathrooms after myself. I don't need to clean them anymore. The ultimate factor here, though, is am I able to become more productive by having less productive activities? And it's those activities that it doesn't matter who does the job, the outcome's going to be the same. I know how to clean the house, and I can clean the house just as good as they can clean the house. The fact is, though, that they can do it in less time, and they can do it all in one approach. So it is your ability to influence yourself. I've seen people, and I've had clients that tell me, I don't want to hire a housekeeper. I don't want to be that kind of person. And I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Housekeepers, it's a job. My mom was a housekeeper, and it's a job, and they need a job, and you can give them a job by having them clean your house, and they're professionals. They do a better job than you will. Same goes with mowing the lawn or car repair or running errands. A lot of folks have criticized some of my clients who start using delivery services or a concierge in their community to do the majority of their shopping for them. Now, here's the deal about this is a concierge is going to only buy the things on the list. Now, I don't know about you, but there have been times I've been out to go look at one thing and bought something else. It's just because you have in the back of your head these other purchases. But when you plan your purchases, you tend to spend less. And by spending less, you can afford someone out to go out and go shopping for you. And in the sense of shopping, it frees up your time. Just President's Day yesterday, me and the kid had to run some essential errands, and it took us half a day. Now, it was essential errands because we physically had to be there, but it still took half a day. That's a half a day I could have been doing something else. Now, of course, because these were essential errands, I don't mind doing them. But if during that we were grocery shopping and doing, picking up basic supplies and looking for parts that could just have been ordered online and shipped to the house, then we are not effectively managing our day-to-day activity. Now, a lot of folks will say, well, it's not environmentally conscious to send others out to run chores for you. And I question that, because even ordering something from Amazon, those UPS trucks are out on the road every day anyway. And it's better to run a full truck than an empty truck. And ultimately, when I do get the cardboard materials and the shipping materials, I strip all that stuff down and recycle it locally. The key here, and the reason I bring that up, is because the biggest obstacle to better self-control or better influence over our individual behavior and prioritization is this distraction or this confusion about who's in charge. So very often when you go to a job, you have a supervisor, and the supervisor's in charge. It doesn't matter if you make $100,000 a year or $300,000 a year, somebody's in charge. And they're ultimately in charge of the desired outcome. So a customer, for example, defines what kind of outcomes you're going to deliver to the marketplace, but how you do it is your choice. Do you do it yourself? Do you have a team of people do it? Do you train a team of people who work alongside you? Do you ultimately contract it out to someone else? You should focus, instead of doing the work, on the marketing and the control of the work, the quality levels, the definition of success criteria. That is where you have the greatest value to the marketplace. That is where you have the greatest income opportunity. And that is where you're going to have the greatest you may not feel right away that you're accomplishing anything, but it often has greater, I don't want to say euphoric value, but that chemical transaction in your mind when you see someone who you've mentored do great. So when your kid succeeds, the parent it just feels so good. It works the same way in the marketplace. And this is a special kind of influence that sets up a relationship between the mentor and the mentee that makes the mentor better. It makes the mentee better, and then they challenge each other. One of my greatest feelings is when a subscriber or a coaching client goes out and does what I've asked them to do. And we've done a consultation, and we've talked about their needs. We talk about the possible opportunities and the actions that could be taken and what's the cost benefit of each action. And we've talked about some of the other details, and then they just went and did something. Oh my gosh, that feels good. I will cancel a phone call with one person to get a person who's doing something on the phone just because it just feels incredible. And you can have the same feeling as you gain more control over your own time. And that's just something you take. It's your time. Take it. But you'll start syndicating, which is helping others do what you do by documenting what you do so that others can do it without any of your instruction at all. It's by collaborative work, working in small teams. It's by lifting people up to positions where they can do for themselves. These things feel great. You can get high on this stuff. So you do need to do the math to make sure it is monetarily and time productive for yourself. I did mention environment. You can go work in a quiet place. If you're constantly being interrupted, you go take your computer and you turn off I have multiple computers. I have some computers that have no instant messenger, no Skype, no nothing. It's just word processing. I have a system that's just accounting. You can do the same way. One of my clients rented an office near his main office. So he got like a little incubator site. It's $200 a month. It is a desk, and he comes in with his work laptop, sets it down, and works for about an hour or 2 hours, and then he goes into the office. No telephone, no nothing. It's just an empty office and a desk. And instead of taking that laptop home and working on stuff at night, he very often stops by this office on the way home, works on some things, leaves the laptop there, and then goes home with no laptop and no work cell phone. It's all in this little office. And then if someone calls in the middle of the night, they don't get them. And he takes care of it the next day. Not a big deal, because he comes in the next day and he goes to his little office, he does his little work, and then he goes on. Now you may be saying, well, Justin, can he expense the office? No, he doesn't get to expense the office. He gets an hour and a half of productive time in the morning. He gets an hour and a half of productive time in the evening. And because it's close enough to the office, he misses a lot of traffic. So his commute is about 30 minutes, where in traffic it's almost 2 hours. And think about this. This is where you have to break free of the common mentality. If his commute is 2 hours and he spends 90 minutes doing productive work and only has a 30-minute commute, it's the same 2 hours, different activity. And so spending a couple $100 a month for a little tiny office space. Regus Office Network, for example, is perfect for this. You can get a shared office. You can get a by the hour office that you can get on the schedule and go use when you decide to use it. Now, some of these shared spaces, you can't leave a laptop overnight. You wouldn't want to leave your corporate assets overnight. But ultimately, it takes away excuses. Now, I've seen the same thing done with field technicians, where they'll have a little office or a storage unit somewhere, and they'll come and stop and drop off all their tools and lock everything all up, then come cruise home. One guy he drove a van. He would drop off the van at the storage unit. It was like you could park the whole van in there, and there's room in the back for tools and stuff. And then he would get in his little sports car, and he'd drive home in his little sports car. So every day he'd come home. Now, there's some other factors here, but every day he'd come home to his house in his fancy little sports car, and then he'd drive away in his fancy little sports car, and then he'd get in his little work van, and he'd go do his job, and then he would park the van and come back home. His big thing he was in a fancy neighborhood. He didn't want to have a dirty work truck out in his yard, in his driveway, and he didn't want to load his garage up with a bunch of tools and equipment. He did some specialized computer work, which I said, fine. We talked about it, and then he came up with this idea because he also wanted a sports car, and this was a way of him getting the sports car. Folks, I don't really care how you better manage your time. I don't really care how you gain control over your own mind and your ability to influence your own behavior. I just care that you do it. Because once you've gotten this down, you can start with our usual method of goal setting and outcome determination, establishing deliverables, determining projects that will build these deliverables, and the project includes the resources and the revenue models and everything like that. And then ultimately, what actions are you going to take? What actions are your team going to take? And then it just happens. In fact, when you use inside strategic relations, these strategic relationship methods, you're going to start seeing the relationship between systems, the relationship between people, the relationship between companies. And then you're going to be able to just plug in those resources or those action plans or those activities, and then it just magically happens. Now, sometimes it does get boring. There isn't as much drama as a lot of people like to have every day. There are some weird creative elements that outsiders look at and they think is pretty weird. Like it does sound pretty weird for someone to drive their van to a storage unit, and then they pull their little sports car out, and then they park their van in there. They might clean some tools or check their inventory, and then they cruise home on their little sports car. But what it meant to the individual is that he had that perception of coming home and then spending dedicated time with family, and then in the morning cruising off again, and then getting back into it was that separation between that work activity and that home activity. And I think he eventually did have a virtual receptionist. I don't think there were phones at the storage unit. It was basically like a garage with inventory, a workbench, and then I saw pictures of it, and then his van would just fit in there, and that was it. There wasn't really a lot of space, but he wanted to come home every day in his sports car, pull up, give his wife a kiss, say hi to the kids, hang out with his family, and then the next morning leave again. He didn't want to have that work follow him home. And that is kind of a theme. Now, in my environment, I have a home office. My work follows me everywhere I go. I am very portable in my work. So my control of my time and effort is turning off the cell phone or walking away from the desk phones so that I can go do another activity. So it's being in the moment around those activities that are important. If you like to sit down and do a paid consultation over this and actually look at your plan, because that's the foundation. If you've got a plan, it's so much easier to manage yourself. Goals, deliverables, opportunities, project portfolios, those types of things are so functional because if you can't influence yourself, then how do we expect you to be able to influence others? Sure, I can give you some tips and tricks to make you more relevant to the people around you, to give you some thought leadership, control, and other types of mindset things. But then if you're not controlling yourself and you're not influencing yourself, then when someone raises their hand and they'd like to hire you for something or they'd like to promote you for something, you're not going to be able to have that action happen. Because if you're always looking for what's on the other side of the fence, that greener pastures, and never really being able to deliver, then it doesn't matter how strong the relationship is that you have, it'll fall apart. And that's what we help you with here at Inside Strategic Relations. In fact, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. I'm here to help you create and keep profitable customers. And even if you're a high-income professional, your customer could be your employer. It could be your supervisor. It could be your family. And I'm here to help you transform business relationships into profits guaranteed. And we talk about business relationships because it does sound a bit manipulative to control yourself, to set an agenda for your day and stick to it no matter what, and to do so that you have control over a marketplace that will provide you the means to do other things that you want to do. It sounds kind of self-centered but it's really an ecosystem of relationships, and I'm here to help you with that. If you have any questions about what we've covered today or anything you'd like me to cover in the future, you can visit www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Thanks for listening.